Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we'll be talking about season 4 of the show True Detective, also known as True Detective Night Country. Fun fact: Night Country refers to the vast network of ice caves surrounding Ennis, but I also wondered if it also referred to the fact that the show takes place in Alaska, where in some places, like the fictional Ennis, there is a darkness for a prolonged period of time. This season came out in 2024 and stars Jodie Foster, Callie Reis, and Finn Bennett, and was created by Issa López. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. True Detective Night Country follows police chief Liz Danvers, who lives in the small town of Ennis, Alaska, and comes across a case where some scientists were frozen to death, which leads to a lot of questions about what actually happened. As we learn more about Liz and her relationship with the people in this town, we also come to meet Trooper Navarro, who has been trying to solve the murder of Annie Kaltok. As the mystery unfolds, we come to learn that these two cases that seem like they have nothing in common might actually be connected. True Detective Night Country is a supernatural horror and detective fiction show. It has similar vibes to Fringe, Fargo, or The X Files. True Detective is on its fourth season, and while it's mainly a detective show, this season added some supernatural elements that made the show have more spooky vibes. Alaska was the perfect setting for this because it just looked cold and spooky. The show got off to a slow start with me, if I'm being completely honest, but as the season went on, I became more and more invested in the murders, but also learning more about Liz's family and her relationship with Navarro. Jodie Foster co-leads this season, and I thought that she gave a great performance as this police chief who had very few redeeming qualities, but you are interested in her story to figure out why she is the way that she is, and to see how this case will change her. One of the plot points that kept me coming back was wanting to know about not only Liz's family, but also why everyone seemed to hate her. We come to find out that her husband and kids died in a car accident, and that seems to be the moment where most of her likable qualities left. She still has people she cares about, but the way that she shows that she cares is deeply flawed, and instead she pushes people away. I love seeing her character's development over the season and how this particular case affected her and changed her for the better. Throughout the show, we see Liz and her stepdaughter, Leah's relationship, and how they constantly clash. I was thinking about why they decided to have that in the show, and what I gathered is that this season focuses on the divide between indigenous voices and the white people who are trying to silence them. I feel like even though it may seem like Liz hates Leah, and vice versa, Liz is taking care of Leah even though that's not her daughter, which shows that she does care. And I kind of think that Leah is her connection to the Annie K case. I say connection not because Leah is related to Annie, but because she is Inupiat like Annie and understands that the justice system has failed the Inupiat in terms of solving this murder and preventing the townspeople from getting sick. Liz and Leah's relationship forced Liz to actually face what's going on in Ennis. Throughout the show, we see that Liz doesn't want Leah embracing any of her culture, which always comes off as rude and disrespectful, which the way that she was going about it was, but I think that Liz was trying to keep her safe and didn't want her to end up like Annie, but she really needed to figure out a better way to bring it up. I'm glad that in the end it looks like she has loosened up a bit and let Leah embrace her culture and saw that they really look out for each other always. Trooper Navarro was one of my favorite characters who was played by the brilliant Callie Reis. And I love the fact that she was one of the few people who was really trying to figure out what happened to Annie. She is a tough trooper, and we find out that she has been through a lot. Like her mom dying and never giving her her Unapiat name, her sister having schizophrenia and later killing herself, which was heartbreaking to see, and then herself towards the end starting to hear and see things. She might have been a cop, but she was really advocating for the indigenous voices as much as she could, even though it was an uphill battle. One thing about Navarro is you could tell that she holds a lot and tries to figure out all of her stuff on her own instead of burdening others, but also is constantly looking after women who sometimes cannot look after themselves. One scene that stands out for me when she does this is when she gets a call that her sister dies and shows no emotion and doesn't tell Pete and tells him to go home. And you can see her not wanting to ruin his celebration, and she handles it in her own way, which was kind of self destructive. The end of the season makes you wonder if she is actually dead or did she disappear on purpose and come back in that final shot. I thought that she died and kind of fulfilled her mission, but there was still, you know, a moment that, we see her with Liz, and I think that she came back to protect the indigenous women. But honestly, who knows? They left the ending very mysterious. So she could be dead, she could be alive, but guess what? We may never know. I must say that the final shot was beautifully done. Nothing was said between Navarro and Liz, but just the way that it was shot from like in the house looking out and just focusing on these two characters and the ambiguity surrounding Navarro kind of just made it like the perfect place to end. We meet Rose Agnew, who seems to have a connection with these dead bodies, and I thought that Fiona Shaw did such a good job taking on this role. She's a woman who lives by herself and is very mysterious. I would have loved to learn more about her character, but every time she was on screen, I feel like she kind of stole the show. One part that stood out for me was in the end when Pete wants to see what she is going to do with his dad. And she's like, "You want to see me cut your dad's lungs so that he never floats back up again?" Which makes him change his mind immediately. And then she tells him that this part right now of, getting rid of your dad's body isn't the easy part. The easy part is going to be dealing with this for the rest of your life. I, thought that her and Navarro had a really interesting relationship, and it seemed like they always looked out for each other. Finn Bennett did a good job holding his own against some great actors and showing this character who's being torn between family and work. We see how his parents' marriage fell apart because of his dad's work. And in the show, we see how his relationship is suffering because of his work and more so Liz. It was sad that he was physically abused by his dad, and you could tell that this still affected him. And he really wanted to break that cycle with his own son and to try and be like the best father he could. One of the most shocking parts of this season came at the end of episode 5 when we see Pete kill his father, Hank. Hank never seemed like a good cop, but in this episode, we see he's helping this company cover up what they are doing, and we just know something shady is going down. Hank kills Otis Heiss, who was going to be a witness for Liz, and as he is turning his gun towards Liz, he not only says a bone chilling line, which is, "I didn't kill Annie, I just moved her body," but then his son shoots him in the head in a shocking twist of events that had my mouth wide open. It was so shocking to have that episode end like that and had me on the edge of my seat waiting for the finale. There's a scene in the finale of the son cleaning up the blood in his underwear and him with blood all over him. And I don't know why, but that scene reminded me of like a scene from American Psycho, which I don't know if that was intentional, but that's something that like caught my eye. But to end the episode with that was a big shock. And then I was needed the final episode immediately because I was like, what is going on? The show highlighted Indigenous voices and showed how much they risk to not only protect their own health, but the health of the land. The earth should be respected, and they do that, but these big corporations are greedy and disrespect the land and the people who are trying to stop them. In the end, we find out, to no one's shock, that the company that the Inupiat have been actively fighting against has been poisoning Innis and faking environmental data. The people of Ennis have been there before the events of the show, and clearly they were going to be there after. I think it's important to show these indigenous voices on TV shows. And while the events of this show are not real, some of the events of the show mirror what indigenous people have to go through to have their complaints taken more serious and to try and protect the land that they live on. Music and shows is always cool to see, and I love the addition of Bad Guy by Billie Eilish in the intro, and Seven Devils by Florence and the Machine, which plays at the end of episode 2. Both songs were a shock to me because I just expect more instrumentals, not some songs from pop music makers. Also, the addition of Seven Devils reminds me of how once upon a time ago I watched this show Revenge just because I heard that that song was in the show and I loved the song and I wanted to see how it would tie into the show. And it did not let me down. The show focuses on two murders who have a small connection at first, which is Annie's tongue is found in the Slaw station, but we come to find out that they are more connected than we thought. It was interesting to see that all of the events of the show that seemed to be separated actually weren't, and also highlighted the issues that Ennis was facing. While I think Alaska was a great location to add to the spooky and scary vibes, the one thing I was wondering is why weren't the characters wearing scarves or like face coverings? I get that we want to see their mouths and, we want to see them talking to each other, but they're walking in like a cold blizzard or even just outside in Alaska, which obviously is cold with, they have warm clothes on and you could tell that they're cold because of the clothes they're wearing, but then you see their neck and their face is just exposed. It's just like one of those small things that would make more sense in like the context of like where the show was located, and kind of like especially them showing like so much snow. So you know that it's cold and like from the character's outfit, it's cold, but it just doesn't match that they're just like have these like exposed spots that would be very painful to experience in such cold weather. So I just thought that that was something small that they should have, probably thought about. I love the slow burn on showing past events of the main characters. These events in this show helped you understand the characters and their relationships, which is important, but with the slow burn, it keeps people wanting more. With the way they handled the slow burn, it was like a side mission of learning more about the characters, but I still think the characters' backgrounds are just as important to learn about as as well as what's currently going on in the show. From this, we not only learn about what happened to Liz's family, but we also figure out what happened between her and Navarro and how they were partners on a domestic violence case that is classified as a murder suicide. But we come to find out it's not a suicide because Navarro killed the man after multiple failures from the police to intervene, which ended up with him killing his girlfriend. This explained why Navarro is a trooper and why her and Liz have like this weird relationship because they have a past together and there are certain people who know the truth of what happened, and have not made it public, but they hold it over them. One thing about Liz is she always encouraged people to ask the right questions, and sometimes maybe people question if they really wanted to ask a question. This probably resonated with me because I feel like that is something that is done so often, which is people not asking the right questions and then getting an answer that they're not actually looking for because they didn't ask the right question. When Liz is working with others, she's always encouraging them to ask the right question that will get them to the answer that they need. And it was so interesting how that even comes back into play in the end when they realize that there was a question that they didn't ask correctly in reference to this case. I just love that the focus was on this questioning and how you can ask a question in a way that will help pull out the answers that you need to help, you and whatever you're doing, in this instance, solving a murder or multiple murders. My favorite part of this season was the story at the end. While the story is being told, we see the event as they unfold and how these women who were inupiat got justice for one of their own after being failed by everyone else. In this scene, they talk about it like it's just a story and not the actual truth. and kind of leaves that question of, is this the truth, lingering. I thought it was a great moment to show how these women came together and did what needed to be done, but also let the environment or supernatural entity do the rest, which leads to the death of the scientist. The way that they told the story was so interesting, and to see how they handled everything and kept it a secret. Navarro and Liz decide not to look into the situation any further and instead close the case and leave the women and the rest of the indigenous people alone, seeing as they have been through enough and have the closure that they need. True Detective Night Country was great to me, and I love the detective mystery of it all and the supernatural elements and how they blended it all together. I thought the cast was great, and while I thought the beginning was a bit slow, it steadily picked up and had me on the edge of my seat. I really liked how this season kind of elevated indigenous voices, and I really like that instead of having like this kind of white savior complex in this show, they have indigenous people looking out for other indigenous people and basically solving their own murder within their community, even though the police are supposed to be doing that, and getting their own form of justice. And so I really enjoyed seeing that this season, and I'm glad that we get more indigenous, stories, and hopefully we get to see more in media as well. Thank you for watching my video. I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. If you haven't subscribed, please do so you can keep up to date with more of my videos. But besides that, everyone stay safe, have fun, and goodbye.